Welcome to Michael Putt's F1, everything Formula One, but from a photographer's point of view. Have you been debating which Formula One race to attend this year? Is the city of Barcelona on your bucket list? If that's the case, then you need to watch this full A to Z guide to the Spanish Grand Prix. In this video, I'll be looking at why the circuit de Barcelona and Catalunya should be on every Formula One fan's list of races to attend. We'll go back and look at the history of this great race, and I'll provide some advice on where to stay, which tickets to get, and how to get to and from the track. Along the way, I'll show you some of my favourite photographs from past races. I've attended well over 20 motorsport events at this track since 2006. It's located in an industrial area roughly 20 kilometres north of Barcelona. In 2024, the race will take place on the 23rd of June. The race distance is 307.236 kilometres long. That equates to 66 laps, and each lap is 4.657 kilometres long. That places it roughly between the Hungaroring and Singapore in terms of length. Last year, the circuit was modified to improve overtaking. They changed the line going into the stadium section, and they removed the chicane in the final part of the lap. This made the track a lot faster, and cars were able to follow each other a lot closer for a lot longer. As a result, the lap record was slashed from 1 minute 24.108 in 2022 to 1 minute 16.330 in 2023. That's nearly 8 seconds faster. And this change has appeared to improve overtaking a lot. Last year, the Spanish Grand Prix was fourth on the list of events with the most overtakes. Ferrari are the most successful constructor. They have 8 victories. Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher have both won the event 6 times and are the most successful drivers. And this is probably Ruben Barrichello's least favourite track because he's failed to finish on 7 occasions, more than any other driver. Qualifying might be more important here than anywhere else, including Monaco. There have only been 3 races in the entire history of this track, going back to 1991, that have not been won from the front row of the grid. And there's been hardly any podium finishes outside the top 5. Pirelli are expected to provide their hardest tyres, and 2 pit stops tend to be the norm. Tyre wear here is very, very high. There's a good mix of high and medium speed corners, and that favours a well-balanced car. This should be a Red Bull track. In the past, this has been Formula One's favourite testing venue, and that's meant that the quality of racing has often suffered, because the teams have almost too much data. However, we haven't tested here for the past 2 seasons, and that could make things a little bit more interesting. The very first Spanish Grand Prix was held in 1913, making the Spanish Grand Prix one of the oldest races in the calendar. However, it wasn't part of the initial Formula One championship. It did appear in the following year with a street circuit in Barcelona in 1951. That race was won by Juan Manuel Fangio, driving an Alfa Romeo. In 1954 was the only other occasion that circuit was used. The Spanish Grand Prix has moved around the country until finally making its home in the Montmeló district of Barcelona in 1991. Technically, the track is still inside the city limits, but it does feel like you're a long way from the Ramblas. That initial race will always be remembered for the titanic battle between Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna. The two went wheel to wheel down the main straight, sparks flying. They were travelling at speeds of around 300 kilometers an hour on a partially wet track. Nigel held his nerve to take the inside line into turn 1 and go on to win the race, the first ever at this track. In 1996, Michael Schumacher won his first race for Ferrari in atrocious conditions. It was a brilliant drive. He started from 3rd on the grid and ended up finishing half a lap ahead of second place man Jean Alesi. In fact, he lapped everyone up to 4th place. That's how dominant he was compared to the rest of the field. The 2006 race was incredible as Fernando Alonso became the first Spanish driver to win a home race. The crowd were ecstatic. It was a huge result for the Spanish driver who would go on to claim the title that year. In 2016, and you can probably see a bit of a pattern here that every 10th year is a classic. Unfortunately, many races at the Circuit de Barcelona de Catalunya have been rather drab affairs, partly due to the teams having so much data, but partly also due to the layout, which didn't allow cars to stay close to each other in the final part of the lap. There used to be a chicane just before the final corner, and this was designed to slow the cars down for safety reasons. But actually, it forced gaps between the cars, making it really hard for drivers to get close enough to pass going down the long straight. It was a lovely place to photograph, but it was rubbish for racing. So despite this Grand Prix having many different winners over the years, most of those started at pole and just drove off into the sunset. That is, apart from 2016. Here the 2 Mercedes were on pole position. They were in a heated battle for the championship. This was the 5th race of the season. Rosberg had won the first 4 races, and Lewis was trying everything he could to get back into the title race. So when Rosberg led the field away on the opening lap, Lewis saw a gap on the inside going into turn 4. There wasn't much of a gap, and Rosberg closed it quite quickly, unfortunately forcing Lewis onto the grass. Here he lost control, spun, and took out his teammate. This left the way clear for a very surprising winner. Max Verstappen, the 18-year-old, had been promoted to Red Bull that race, taking Daniel Kvyat's seat. He managed to hold his nerve and win from 4th place on the grid. This was his first race win, and in doing so, he became the youngest driver ever to win a Grand Prix. Now, Max did win last year's race from pole position. He did win most races last year, so that's not too unusual. But behind him, the race was one of the most dramatic we've had in Barcelona. There were a lot of overtakes, and most of that's thanks to the new layout changes. That simple change has transformed this track from being rather a dull race to one of the most exciting of the year. And because the cars are so much closer this year, I'm expecting an absolute cracker. There are a lot of ways of arriving to the track. The nearest airport is Barcelona El Prat, which is located to the south of the city. You could drive to the track, but traffic can be a bit of a nightmare. There are around 32,000 car parking spots available. These cost roughly €20 for the weekend, but they can increase in price depending on the proximity to the track. Make sure you don't leave any valuables in the car, because in the past many cars have been broken into. There are taxis going from the city, but these can get quite expensive. Uber is technically available, but it works a little bit differently than most other places. Here it works more like a hailing device for metered cabs. Cabify is probably the most commonly used ride-sharing app in Barcelona. There is a bus service offered by a company called Sargalo. It should take 45 minutes depending on the traffic, and tickets cost €10. For this race, I would suggest using the train, especially if you're staying in Barcelona. There are a number of stops in the city which lead to Montmeló station. From here you can either walk to the track or take a bus. I would suggest trying to get a train as early as possible because it does get very, very busy. Also, keep a good eye on the train times because there is a reduced service on Saturday and Sunday. The line that you're looking for is the R2. It's also the train that takes you to the airport, which might also be useful to know. If you do go for this option, try and find accommodation close to one of the train stations that it stops at in town. Barcelona is one of the most vibrant, wonderful, beautiful cities in Europe. It's full of history dating back to pre-Roman times. The city has been blessed with artists such as Dali and Miro, and Gaudi's buildings give it such a unique, whimsical character. Beautiful beaches, exquisite food make it a wonderful city to visit, not just on race weekend. I make an annual pilgrimage to the restaurant Tapas 24, which is one of my favourite places in the city. I would recommend staying in Barcelona rather than trying to find somewhere near the track. These are probably already fully booked, and they're actually quite difficult to get to, and Barcelona itself is so fun and festive you wouldn't want to miss out on that. Hotel prices have risen considerably over the past few years. However, you still can find something for most budgets. Barcelona is blessed with some extraordinarily beautiful, luxurious hotels. The one that really caught my eye was the penthouse of the Mandarin Oriental. This is on the Passage de Gracia, and it's spanning the entire top floor of the hotel. It has 2 bedrooms, a living room, dressing room, a bathroom, terraces, kitchen, living area, and a dining area for 8 people. Total size is 236 square meters, and the cost per night, if it's available, is at least €16,000 for 2 people. A more affordable option on the same street is El Poleta. This property has a series of stunning modern suites in a glorious period building. The average cost per night is €1,050. Most have 2 bedrooms, a living room, 2 bathrooms, balconies that overlook the Passage de Gracia, and full disclosure, I have actually stayed here a few years ago, and I can't recommend it enough. It is brilliant. However, I did get an awfully good deal on the room cost. A more sensible option would be the Practica Venetica Hotel, which is a 3-star. They have twin rooms available for €175 a night, and it's in a great location. The best budget option I could find is a bed in a 16-person dormitory for €32 a night at the Casa Barcelo Camp Nou, Barcelona. Here you also have a shared bathroom. It's worth checking out Airbnb because you often get some very, very good deals there. There are a lot of different ticket options available. The general admission areas at this track are probably some of the best around. Tickets start at €249 per person for the weekend, and there are a lot of vantage points where you can watch the cars from. Grandstands start from €369 per person. There are a number at this price bracket. I think Grandstand N, which is just outside Turn 9, is possibly the best positioned one. There are also some positioned on the start-finish straight, and here you'll see the cars travelling at full speed. If you're a Max Verstappen fan, you should head over to Grandstand G. Here, tickets are $449 for the weekend. There are also Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz themed stands. The main grandstand, which is opposite the pits, is $619 per person. This is quite good value for money for a prime position. Here you can watch the start, it's got good views of the pit stops, and also the podium celebrations at the end of the race. Stand T1 has one of the best views on the track. Here you'll have great views of turn 1, and the higher you are in the stand, you'll get some beautiful views over the whole racetrack. There are a lot of very unique hospitality options. I do suggest you hunt around and find the one that suits you best. There is the Village Garden, which is at the last corner. This looks very relaxed and chilled. There's Pelkos, which is next to the main grandstand, and this looks like a lot of fun. The best valued hospitality package I could find was from F1 Experiences, their starter package, which includes a seat and grandstand inn, and this starts at €599. The packages increase in price from here all the way up. The exciting thing is that since our last visit, they've built some new hospitality options. There is a panorama village which is located near the start and finish straight. This is around $5,820 per person for the weekend. But the one that I'm really excited about is this brand new rooftop lounge, which is an epic hospitality unit built as a bridge which straddles the track just before turn 9. It boasts panoramic views, amazing luxury, it has a full bar and Michelin star food is served. Tickets for this new incredible spot start at €4,253 per person for the weekend. And it does look like one of the coolest places to watch Formula 1 from anywhere in the world. But this brings me to an interesting point, a sort of the elephant or the Madrid in the room, because from 2026, the Spanish Grand Prix will move to the country's capital for a race around a convention centre and the Real Madrid training ground. And while it appears Barcelona will still feature on the 2026 calendar, no one knows what will happen after that. Can Spain justify 2 races? Italy has 2, but France and Germany and Africa don't have any. So is all this investment in these new facilities wasted? Is this race ultimately doomed? We'll just have to wait and see, but if you want to see Formula 1 cars racing around this track, I would suggest you book soon. You might only have 2 years left available. Finally, this race takes place in June. It's often very, very hot, so do make sure you bring lots of sunscreen, hydrate as much as possible, and get ready to enjoy an absolute fiesta of motorsport. Thank you so much for joining me for this A to Z guide to the Spanish Grand Prix. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the race, feel free to ask. And if you are attending, do say hi. It'll be great to see you. Until then, goodbye.